Making decisions involves a lot of questions and involves a lot of mental brain power. You have to consider every outcome to make sure you're actually making that right decision. This can be extremely mentally taxing, and a lot of people will just opt out to not make a decision at all because it's a lot easier. Because you can't be wrong if you don't make a decision. That's why, for all of you in car sales, I've heard this exact line so many times: if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be, which has got to be one of the worst things to hear because that doesn't make any sense. Make it meant to be. So today we're going to go over how to use micro decisions to help your clients make the decision they were already going to make without having to deal with decision fatigue. My name is Jason Vines. I've trained hundreds of salespeople, run a bunch of stores, open to open points, and I created this channel to help people like you get better at car sales, treat it as a profession so you can make more money and make life easier for yourself, your family, and your clients. If you think about it, having your client come in the same day and not purchase a car is kind of a waste of time. Now, obviously, you can't sell a car same day to every single client that walks through the door. It's not possible. But what you can do is help the client along the path so that it makes their life easier to make these decisions. Now, to understand how to utilize micro decisions, you have to first understand what they are. So a micro decision is a decision that's made subconsciously or semi-consciously that doesn't actually take any or very little brain power. So for example, you go to a restaurant, you and your friends or family walk up, you go to sit down, and you have to decide right side of the table, left side of the table, and then which chair you want to take. It is technically a decision, but it is made semi or subconsciously. It doesn't take any brain power to decide where to sit. You'll actually notice certain types of clientele will really struggle with micro decisions. Engineers, accountants, their whole job is to make sure that even the smallest decision is extremely important. So for engineers and accountants, sometimes teachers as well, they do find it difficult to go down this journey. But for 99% of the rest of civilization, they are not so focused on these micro decisions. Now, when it comes to buying a car, you would think it is a big decision, but it's not one big decision. It's hundreds of micro decisions that lead to a final yes and a signature at the end. That decision was already made before they ever came into your dealership. They are at your store to buy a car. All you have to do is not mess it up. So let's go over the funnel so that you can understand how many micro decisions they've made before actually getting in the door, because it's really important to understand where your clients are at right now. So the first part of the journey is the trigger. Now, the trigger could be something like an advertisement online. It could be that their friend down the road got a car and they want to one-up them, or it could be something as simple as their lease is up. Between trigger phase and actual purchase, it's 89 days on average for a consumer to purchase a car. And there's all of these micro decisions that are happening to get them to the next step before they actually make that purchase. Step 2 in the micro decision phase is they're deciding to do research. They're looking at a couple different cars, and again, they are making these decisions. Which brands am I interested in? Which models of these brands? Which trims of these models of these brands am I interested in? The next thing is going to be consideration. When you get to the consideration phase, they've now made that next micro decision to figure out how much it's actually going to cost them. What do the payments look like? Am I going to finance or lease? What is my trade worth? Right? They're deciding to do that research, and they're deciding which angle they'd like to take. Next, they're another micro decision, deciding to make a contact. It could be a web lead, a phone up, or walking in the door. All three of these are still a decision to do something and proceed down the next step. And finally, and only at the very end, the AKA big decision, do they make a purchase? But 1, 2, 3, 4 big decisions with many, many micro decisions in between to get to this final purchase. So what you have to understand when you're talking to the client, this last piece of information isn't a big decision. They've already made their decisions. They're just here, and you need to coach them through. So we're going to go over kind of how, once you get to numbers, how to coach them through using additional micro decisions to get them to actually buy the car that day. Before we get to the next part, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please add any comments about things that you'd like to learn more about in the future so I can keep coming out with these videos. Okay, for this next part, this is assuming that you've appraised their trade, They're at their end of their purchase. We're just presenting numbers. You've made the right selection. We're going to be presenting both finance options and lease options in this breakdown. If it's a new car, obviously, if it's used, we're not going to be leasing. For this example, we'll show you new car options because we want to utilize as many micro decisions as we can so that the big decision at the end doesn't seem like a big deal. Make sure that you explain the difference between finance and lease to your client before you get to this part. Otherwise, it's going to stop the flow of the close. And if anything at this point interrupts you, it will not work. This needs to be yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes sign. So we're going to go over how to do that right now. Okay, the fun part. You're ready to finally present to your client. You've gotten them to the end of their journey. Now, whenever I get my numbers ready, what I was always trained to do was have my numbers folded, not hardly folded, but like lightly folded in my hand, and sit down and talk to the customers and kind of build some sort of suspense, some excitement. Remember, this is fun. You should make it a fun decision. This is where you bring your showmanship out. So I'll talk to the client, I'll sit down and go, okay, are you ready? This is the fun part. And by making it fun, by saying this is the fun part and not insinuating it's going to be a stressful part, literally making it the fun part. This is the end of their journey. They've made all these decisions to get here. This should be light. You need to make it light. So what I'll do is I'll rattle the page around, and you'll notice their eyes watching the page, trying to see through it, maybe like you are right now. And then what I recommend is when you're going to sit down with your clients, you want to slide your chair around and sit next to them. You do not want to sit across the desk from your client. There is a literal obstacle in between you and them. There's a barrier. You need to remove that, and you and them are now on the same side. So you're sitting next to them, and you go to present your numbers, and you've got your deal sheet here. You go, okay, and again, micro decisions. Mr. Customer, just so you know, I've got warranties built into all these payments. You're fully protected. I've got a ton of options. What we're going to do is I've presented them to you here. We're going to go figure out which one that you prefer and help you make a decision. So first thing, Mr. Customer, micro decision number one. Do you prefer lease or finance? And if they say finance, perfect. No problem. Okay. So I've got a couple options here. I've got 60 months, 72 months. There is a longer option if you'd like to see it. I've got a couple different options down, and these are what all the biweekly payments look like. Now, I will not read out every individual payment. They have eyes. They can read the numbers. You do not have to say them. Let them glance, and just like they're trying to pick a bingo card, there's going to be one that's sticking out to them. So you present it to them, and you go, okay, so quick question. Do you prefer micro decision number two? Putting no money down, some money down, or a bit more money down? And depending on where you're at in North America, they'll say, I've got no money, right? So let the customer decide on their behalf. Well, for this sake, let's go, well, customer says, I'd like to put $5,000 down. Sure, great, no problem. That second micro decision has now been made. See what we're doing here. Okay, they can't look at lease. They're now looking at finance. Now there's only two options, but there's also a lingering third option they know about. Okay, Mr. Customer, now we know you're going to go 5 down on the finance. Do you prefer going shorter term, the longer term, or would you like to see what the third term looks like? Now, in their head, they're going, well, the third term's probably a lower payment based on the numbers. They'll say, yeah, sure. Why don't you show me the longer term? At which point you can run over to the sales manager, get your 84-month term, only fill it out for the 5K down option, and go, great, okay. So we know that we're not going to be looking at the 60-month term, right? That's why we're looking at the longer one. Micro decision number 3. You go, no, I wouldn't go with the shorter term. Perfect. Okay. And, based on this, looks like you've decided on finance. Now, do you want to go with the shorter of the two terms, or do you prefer the 84-month? And then you shut the fuck up. This is where the client actually makes the big decision. The next question that I'm going to tell you is in their mind what the big decision is, but that is incorrect. When they finally make this decision, you remember, we've gone through trigger, research, consideration, contract, and now we're at the actual purchase part. In their heads, this is the big decision. They've been making these micro decisions the whole time. And then you got them to make lease or finance. More money down, less money down. Shorter term, longer term. And now we're just deciding between two things. The car's already right. The trade's already right. It's just two things to do. So they go, well, yeah, you know what? I think I'd go longer term. And you go, perfect, no problem. Scratch this one out. You circle it. And you go, awesome, perfect, okay. Just sign right here. And I swear to God, 50% of the time, they will grab the pen and sign it. But if you do not ask it, or if you don't have the fucking cojones to say, here, sign it, they're never going to do it. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You have to hand them the pen. You didn't say, would you like to buy the car? Would you like to do the sale? You said, here, sign it. And in their head, decision, 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 here's the pen, decision, sign. It's now low pressure. It now makes sense to them. They now no longer have questions. They can't have decision fatigue because all they did was make semi-conscious or subconscious, well, in this case, semi-conscious decisions between all of these options. At no point was it a big deal. If you just present them one number, the inevitable question is going to be, well, what are the other numbers? There couldn't possibly be any more numbers. I showed you everything. I showed you everything there possibly was. Sign here. And if you make it light and fun and you wave the sheet around and now all of a sudden you feel like they've answered all the questions that they could possibly ask you, I'm here, like, yeah, sure, okay, no problem. Now, if you're a killer at this, you'll probably get up to about 70% of the people are going to sign it when you say, okay, no problem, sign here. Sometimes, and I'm going to be honest, sometimes it surprises me when people sign it. Like when I present a number, I'm like, there's no way this guy's going to sign it. And I go through the process, I use the micro decisions, and he grabs the pen, and I'm like, oh my God. It is shocking. It almost makes it a game. It should be fun. It should be light. It should be fun to you. It should be light to them. Now, the other 50% of these people that don't take the pen and sign may have some legitimate objections. I've got a video here that you can click. It goes over how to handle objections when a client says the inevitable, I've got to think about it, or, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Again, the whole purpose of you doing the micro decisions process is so that they don't get to the point where they don't feel comfortable making the quote unquote big decision. Remember, the reason we're doing this is to help the clients. It should be easy for them, but people inevitably are going to have a lot of internal questions that they need answers to feel like they're making the right decision. If you present them with only one or two options, inevitably they're going to have more questions. So you want to give them this information overload and then help them through the micro decisions because it's exactly what they've been doing the whole time. Remember, these people have already made hundreds of micro decisions to get in the door. The reason that we use the micro decisions on close is because they're familiar with it. At no point was there any big decisions. I decided to look at a car, to research it, to look at numbers. I decided to contact the dealership. And then hundreds of micro decisions in between these things, like even like which website to look at to appraise my trade. And then they come in, and when it comes to the purchase, if you can break it down in such a way that it's really simple, finance, it really is this simple, just to recap so that you understand. Finance or lease, money down or no money down, shorter term or longer term, out of those two, which would you prefer? Sign here. It sounds crazy easy. And if you practice this and you role play this with your staff at work, you're going to see your closing ratio improve. You're going to see that you don't now have to follow up. And if there's anything you take away from this, do this just so you don't have to follow up with clients. There's nothing worse than somebody dodging your call because they don't know how to say they bought a car somewhere else. Use the micro decisions to help them and use it to help yourself. Thanks so much for sticking around for the video. If you have any other questions, please reach out to me directly. Thanks for watching.